And hello, welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I am Daren, Jaime, your host. Thank you for joining us. If you're asking the question, what is the show all about? We bring you a forum discussing and providing a deeper understanding of the issues and inequities that many communities face. From systemic inequalities to pressing social problems, our guests provide multiple perspectives as well as insights, helping us better understand and address these challenges. So we invite you to stay connected to us as the Social Justice Forum starts now. And welcome back. The borough of the Bronx is home to countless entrepreneurs with big ideas, yet many of them struggle to have access to the resources, the funding, and the connections they need to thrive. The Community Enterprise Accelerator is an initiative that's empowering under-recognized entrepreneurs by providing grants, tailored support, and opportunities for capacity and community building. Joining us now is the founder and executive director of Community Enterprise Accelerator, Tim Gamory, and thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So, for somebody that doesn't know a little bit about your work, talk to us about it.
Sure. So the Community Enterprise Accelerator, it's a fellowship program designed to support under-recognized entrepreneurs in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. We provide grant capital, mentorship, and tailored support to help these entrepreneurs grow their businesses and their community impact.
For entrepreneurs today, 2025, what are we seeing in terms of like the number of people? I'm assuming that with the way that the economy is tanking, COVID, the things of that nature, that entrepreneurship is taking off.
Yeah, that's a great sign. It's that a lot of more people are considering and thinking about how they could do their own thing, mm-hmm. right? So, and particularly in the Bronx, it has a greater percentage of very small businesses. Lots of solopreneurs. So the entrepreneurship spirit is alive and well here in the Bronx. And there are resources available, but it's hard, as you mentioned, it's hard to navigate the resources that are available.
So you have an opportunity to do that, right? And some of the work that you're doing is really putting entrepreneurs on that flat footing. If you look at it from your perspective right now, how hard is it for that entrepreneur to really just break out and break into their own?
Yeah, it's very challenging because there's so many factors. Mm-hmm. Like we talk about in the CEA, the ecosystem that we exist in, because it's not just your particular industry, it's not just your neighborhood. There's so many factors that go into play. There's in terms of the funding sources, the markets. There's just so much to consider for an entrepreneur. So they need guidance, and that's where we're really leaning in to support at a deep level a small number of entrepreneurs, but there's a bigger vision where we're helping to build a community of entrepreneurs that are also supporting each other, mm-hmm. and connecting to younger people, because we have high school interns that are being connected to this group of entrepreneurs. So those relationships are really key to navigating whatever it is they're trying to do. It's having people that have been there, whatever industry. So being intentional about having like a wide range of connections is really important for us.
When I look at entrepreneurship, as I said just a few seconds ago, there are some barriers, right, that really people have that you're really trying to help them navigate through. For the average person who may not be so familiar, or for a potential entrepreneur who's out there, what are some of these barriers that we're looking at?
Yeah, there's, access to capital is always a challenge for entrepreneurs, mm-hmm. especially if you don't have and come from a background, like many of us in the Bronx. I'm from the Bronx originally as well. We don't have necessarily wealth in the family to draw upon. Mm-hmm. So that startup capital can be a challenge in navigating those sources of capital. And that's something we build into the program in that we provide grant capital as part of the program. We're at $15,000 each for each business that is provided in a grant. Other kind of obstacles to getting started, relationships also. The relationships to whatever market you're trying to get into. So we work with a diverse number of businesses. So some of them have pursuing city contracts or Department of Ed contracts. And if they don't have the relationships with the schools or the principals, it can be challenging if you don't know how things work, who to contact. So it's based on the market. It can be very difficult to get to the decision maker and who you need to kind of contact.
Yeah.
Other challenges, technology is advancing so rapidly, it's really hard to stay on top of.
Right.
And as a small business owner, you don't want to spend your time just trying to figure out and learn technology. So, and it's a challenge for many small business owners to draw upon a resource that could help them with that technology. So that's also something we've built in terms of providing support that focuses on helping with the systems that you need as a business to put in place. Yeah. The basics, customer relationship management. Where do you store your contact information so that you can easily access it, contact your customers, do data analysis on your customers. If you're not storing them somewhere, there's so much you can't do beyond that. You're holding it in your head. So many of those like fundamental systems, you're just not taught that in schools. Right. So it's something that many entrepreneurs have to stumble and figure out, and because they're entrepreneurial, they're figuring this stuff out, but it slows them down, and we want to help accelerate.
And I know another thing we talk about is collaboration, right? Because in order for an entrepreneur to succeed, there has to be this power of collaboration. Take us behind the scenes a little bit. How do you navigate the conversation about collaboration? Because for some entrepreneurs, a little bit leery.
Yes.
Really, I don't want to share my stuff. I don't want to work with, but you encourage that.
Yeah, it's a powerful part of this model. Like, community is not just a word we use. We're actually cultivating a community of entrepreneurs that are developing trust amongst each other, but also the advisors that we're bringing in, and we're partnering with other organizations like NY PACE, who focuses on identifying professional corporate expertise that want to help small businesses. And we bring them together in person, at events, and share information. So we had an event in January when the cohort kicked off with the entrepreneurs. A number of advisors. It was at Hearst Tower. Hearst is the funder of the CEA. And they were all sharing what their goals are, what their challenges are, what they're trying to achieve, being more vulnerable than you would typically see.
Right.
And that allows more people to be able to assist you. If you're able to say, look, this is what I'm struggling with, you'd be surprised how many people want to help.
Right.
But making that first kind of sharing is challenging. So we've actually built that in, where we have regular in-person meetings with this bigger group of advisors, the smaller group with the fellows. There's 5 entrepreneurs. Every week we meet on Mondays. And it's just amazing, the relationships and what's coming out of this. They're talking and doing things and collaborating and envisioning also, like, imagine what we could do together.
And you got this cohort, right?
Yeah.
Give me if you will, the syllabus for this cohort and what they go throughout this time together.
Yeah. We're really helping position them and see themselves as the CEO and bring some structure to kind of leadership. So we kick off at the Hearst event with this strategic planning session, with stepping back, with doing a SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. These common frameworks in business, right? In bigger businesses, not necessarily entrepreneurs start off at these. Business schools have them. But they're simple, but they're very effective to help you step back, assess, and be strategic about setting goals and setting targets. So we provide these frameworks, but make it simple and accessible, but we do it. So it's not like, hey, here, go read this or do this. It's like, no, we did the session of strategic planning and then developed this action plan, and we keep sharing out. So everybody knows what everyone's trying to do, the businesses and the advisors. We have M&T Bank as a major partner as well. They're volunteer advisors that are connected to each of the fellows. And we're tracking progress on that plan that they've come up with. And each week I'm meeting with them and we're keep revisiting, okay, how are we doing here? What does need to be done? Adjusting. So it's helping, that's a big part of the framework, is that kind of leadership and management as a CEO, and that you're understanding the big picture, you're stepping back, you're also delegating, and you're being more strategic.
Right.
And it's tailored support, because these are 5 different businesses that are very different, industries, stages. So it's tailored to what they're trying to do. And then we're like, help map the resource to it. So one company, Pat's Exotic Beverage Company, Northeast Bronx, family-owned business, Caribbean-inspired juice. They are in a number of stores in the Bronx and are expanding. Very different from Spin and Learn, table tennis company. It's such an inspiring story. The young woman, Yasiris, is an actual professional table tennis player for Dominican Republic. And she lives in the Bronx, and she's a pro. And she teaches in New York City public schools, and has contract with schools to teach table tennis. They're learning from a pro.
Okay.
We've been talking, I'm like, okay, there's gonna be an Olympic champion coming out of the Bronx at some point.
Right.
Because that kind of expertise. So these are different companies, and they have different goals and strategies. So it's, again, very, very tailored. But these frameworks you could use for any business, right? Like getting into quarterly planning, stepping back. So it's helping them with these tools to lead their businesses.
When I look at business, we know that we've seen a lot of them tank, simply because of failure to adapt. I've often talked about, I look at Kodak out there in Rochester, New York, and I say, they would still be around if they would have, the reason Instagram is the way the Instagram is because Kodak failed to really do what they did, what they were supposed to do by way of transforming their business.
Right.
Traditional models sometimes are not necessarily advantageous for rising businesses and rising entrepreneurs. We're seeing a lot of traditional models in the failure component.
Right.
I'm on point when I say this, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the reasoning behind this traditional model failure, what are you seeing?
Well, the tradition, we're in the era where everything's changing.
Right.
Rapidly. I mean, we saw with technology, of course, the biggest companies now didn't exist 25 years ago. Who would have thought? And it's jobs and everything. But now with AI, like, there's no more tradition in a sense where adaptability is the key. It's a new set of tools and kind of like approaches that entrepreneurs have now. It's amazing with technology and AI. I'm deeply learning so that I could help the entrepreneurs utilize these tools, because it's a game changer. So, but it's that ability to learn, and I like recognize patterns, like what's needed, what's happening, what do people need, like understanding customers. So it's really committing to kind of continuous learning so that you can adapt without any assumptions of how things will be, because it's not. It's that ability to adapt, take the pulse constantly, what my customers want. And I think there's a traditional, we'll go back, this aspect of tradition I think is important. It's like real relationships and like solving real problems and people reconnecting. The technology can help actually make us feel more isolated. And there's a need to help connect. And in connecting, identify problems to solve and create businesses and solutions to those problems. And not just problems, but wants and desires. And people have a vision and wish we could, have a coffee shop here. Whatever. There's certain things that I think will persist.
Right.
Our need to connect.
And part of your mission also is really helping people see beyond, like not just the borough, but listen, not just New York City, but how to really engage in a national/global environment.
Yeah, and making those connections too, based on existing relationships. So some of the entrepreneurs in the cohort, like Soul Cacao, craft chocolate bar company, they were in the first cohort, 3 brothers, originally from Trinidad. They make craft chocolate. They're selling in Targets across the country. These amazing chocolate bars. I have a bunch at home.
Is that right? Okay.
Dark chocolate is very good for your health.
Yes.
They only use 3 ingredients, but they've been going back to Trinidad to connect to farms there. They're talking to people there about how do we connect, not just from in the Bronx, but to connect to where they're originally from, and to identify property there. They're having very powerful conversations and vision around expanding and making those connections. So yeah, that's something in terms of visioning that is a big part of it. And what helps unlock that, and why we also focus on like process and these small businesses and help them get the minutia out of the way so that they can vision and not be just trying to catch up, just trying to fight fires, which often happens with any small business, small organization.
As we wind down, tell me a little bit about how people can get access to the work that you're doing and be connected. If I'm a small business owner or an entrepreneur and I say, listen, you know, he's talking my stuff.
Yeah, there's a number of different ways. So we have Instagram, social media accounts, CEABX on Instagram. If you go to Elevate Digital, we haven't launched the Community Enterprise Accelerator dedicated site yet. If you go to Elevate Digital, we have information there about the program, and you'll see the current cohort, the previous cohort. We're launching the new website soon. We have an event coming up on April 11th. If you are a Bronx entrepreneur, if you are in the ecosystem that help and support entrepreneurs, we bring them all together on a quarterly basis. We have an event. You can reach out to find out more about that. And to put it on the radar, we have the applications for the next cohort, our 3rd cohort, opening in May. Beautiful. So we'll be looking for more Bronx entrepreneurs to bring into this community.
And somebody says, what qualifications would I need to be in order to qualify?
Yeah, the Bronx-based business, at least a year in business, 100K in revenue lifetime. That doesn't mean in just in a year, but you've been in business, you generated some revenue. So we're not right now, we're not focusing on purely startups.
Right.
Focusing on some businesses that have been operating.
Right.
And we're prioritizing under-recognized entrepreneurs, Black and Latino, minority entrepreneurs, women, that we're prioritizing.
Yeah, we'll certainly want to make sure people get connected. And once again, let's get the website out there.
Yes, website elevatedigital.nyc.
Okay.
That's where you'll see Community Enterprise Accelerator is on that page.
Tim Gamory, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Great conversation and great work that's going on. If you're a small business entrepreneur in the Bronx, please check it out. Taking a quick break. Guess what? We got more, but we're going to come back right after this.
We're gonna start the show right now. This is my favorite part. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, this is Angel, and I am one of the instructors for the In-Studio production Here at BronxNet, we offer classes that can help you elevate, expand, and start your television career. All you have to do is sign up at bronxnet.org/education. For the past 7 years, I have been in various productions, spanning from talk shows, independent films, news reports, art displays, teachings, musical performances, and many more. Ain't that right, Angel? Yeah, you're absolutely right, Angel. There are a lot of creative individuals that we're just waiting to sign up for the class. And if I may, can I also express that? Thank you, Angel. That's all the time we have left. Visit bronxnet.org/education and become a producer by taking the course. The class I offer is also in English, en español y también bilingüe. Nos vemos en la próxima clase.
And welcome back. A new proposal in New York State known as the Digital Ad Tax Act aims to impose a tax on digital advertising to fund state unemployment programs. But critics argue this could do more harm than good, potentially increasing costs for businesses, limiting job opportunities, and even threatening New York's position as a global media and advertising hub. Joining me now, we've got the Executive Director of Internet for Growth, Brendan Thomas. And Brendan, thank you so much for being with us. And you've written a letter and sent it out to the governor saying this is a no-go, and you got some reservations here. Tell us a little bit about where these reservations come from.
Daren, thanks very much for having me on. It's really an honor to speak with you and your audience about a really important issue for the Bronx and New Yorkers everywhere. In fact, across the country, these digital ad taxes are emerging, and we want to get the word out that they'll be harmful to every community across the country. In this particular case, yes, Internet for Growth is a coalition of thousands of small businesses, creators, and entrepreneurs across the country, many of whom reside in New York, who advocate for digital advertising in the midst of a nationwide tech clash, illustrated by this digital ad tax proposal in New York. And it would seek to impose a tax on what's traditionally been a business expense, deductible for small businesses, large businesses, because it's costly to get the word out and help customers understand your products and services. And so, yes, we wrote a letter to Governor Kathy Hochul, who is now considering a digital ad tax that would affect companies. Just to be clear, larger companies making digital ad revenue over $100 million. Now that sounds like a lot, and it is, but these are very large employers in New York. They employ a lot of people in, as you said, this media hub of New York. It's a very important industry, not only media and advertising. But then, of course, there's a lot of large companies that provide advertising opportunities to small businesses, and advertising also funds the creator economy. And so we're warning the state house and the governor that this digital ad tax on what people may think are just very large companies or companies like Google or Facebook, et cetera, are going to affect your average New Yorker in ways that the policymakers aren't considering right now.
So when we break down the digital ad tax, for somebody who doesn't know, say, put it in layman's terms, how does it work and how does it affect companies?
Well, look, it's a tax. It's a tax on business. And a huge business in New York. 19% of all advertising jobs nationwide are in New York City. But it's not just the advertising industry we're talking about here. It levies a certain percentage of tax for a certain amount of revenue derived from advertising. But again, advertising has traditionally been a business expense. So it doesn't matter if you're an advertising or media company. This tax is going to hit you. You could be selling hubcaps. You could be selling anything at your corner store. You could be selling products and services, and anything you could be selling online, especially in today's day and age where digital advertising opportunities are more accessible than ever. It's going to affect your bottom line. We have to remember how far we've come as an economy and a society where previously it was very difficult for a small business to advertise. Television's too expensive, radio's too expensive, direct mail. And you may be able to do these things on a small scale. Cable came along, et cetera, But now, if you're a small business, you could spend dollars a day just to get the word out about your business and your offerings. I mean, let's take the Bronx, for example. It's a small business hub. Most of the businesses in the Bronx are small businesses. Internet for Growth is a small business coalition. These are the kind of people we advocate for. If you're a small business in the Bronx, let's say you sell the best chopped cheese in New York City and you want to advertise that to your potential clientele in your community, typically you would do that not on radio or television because you'd be missing your core audience, but you do that on a very targeted scale on a social media platform, on YouTube maybe, Instagram, Google, and you could do that at a very refined level, save a lot of money, and reach your core audience. But this tax is going to tax the companies that help you to do that, and the costs are going to trickle down to you, the small business owner.
Yeah. The creator economy. When you talk about being that creator, a lot of people say it puts the creator economy at risk.
That's the flip side of the coin here. So most of the online access you have right now could be through some of the larger web browsers. It could be through some of the larger media platforms. You're getting email, and you're getting free content and news and information and entertainment and media as a result of advertising. I think people aren't aware that the creators and the influencers that are so popular, especially among younger generations these days, earn ad revenue to make a living. And this is what makes the content free. This is why you can just log into your account at Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or any number of competitive companies and get free content, personalized advertising, personalized just to you instantly and free. And that's funded by advertising. So there were a lot of individuals and small creative companies, video, audio, streaming, podcasts, art, music, that make their money from advertising. And this is going to reduce the amount of revenue that these individual creators can earn because companies aren't going to be able to advertise as effectively as they could have. They're not going to be able to put as much money into advertising because there will be taxes. And so small businesses are going to have to pay more, but then everybody's going to have to pay more for what's now free access or ad revenue.
Yeah. And if people are watching right now, it is Senate Bill S-173 on small business. It deals with definitely the tax. And as we've got Brendan Thomas, who's here, the Executive Director of Internet for Growth, talking about why this bill definitely needs to fail. So the common question on the hearts and minds of people are, okay, say that we don't do this. We know there needs to be some economic recovery in this area.
Right.
And you got to make some things happen. From your perspective, how do you go about making it happen without doing this?
Well, look, if you're an entrepreneur these days, I'm sure there are a lot of people in your listenership, your viewership, who are entrepreneurs, small businesses. A lot of young people want to go be influencers. If you're starting a company, any kind of company, the world is your oyster because of digital advertising, really. And that's one of the fundamental things that you can do to start a simple business online, direct to consumer, media oriented, service oriented. It's one of the best things that you can do. And that's why it's been a business expense. So certainly do not pass a digital advertising tax if you want to create jobs at New York businesses, the majority of which are small businesses, especially in the Bronx. I have to say the Bronx is a minority majority area. And just to compound the issue here, there's been no better tool that breaks down economic or geographic barriers than the internet, which is ad supported. And so you definitely don't want to tax that. You're going to affect working and middle class people in a way that you don't want to. And it has to be noted that one of the reasons New York does need economic development is because it's a high tax state and you're losing investment in capital. High income earners, middle income earners, there are other places to live, and unfortunately, people who can move will move, and the people who can't move won't, and they'll be stuck with bad policies. And so if you really want to attract more talent, investment, support New Yorkers, support small businesses, creators, the creator economy in New York, you won't pass this tax. You'll do the reverse, and you'll try to lower the burden on people because it's a competitive environment out there, and you don't want to make up budget deficits or make up for people's economic hardship by enacting more taxes.
If this were to pass, what would be the pass down, if you will, onto the consumer? How does the consumer factor in all of this?
Well, look, we talked about all the free content, media, entertainment. that's available. You could see prices rise. The advertising, it funds everything it funds email, it funds search, as I said, media, entertainment, content, education, personalized experiences. Everything could theoretically cost more, or just simply be more inconvenient for the consumer. Digital advertising is inexpensive. And so one thing it does is lower the cost of your ordinary consumer goods, especially in the midst of inflation. We don't want that. But it also, it generally lowers prices for people, and consumers benefit from lower prices in general.
We've talked about it, and we've had the opportunity to talk and discuss this here on the show. I know that you've taken this matter before legislators. What has been the response of legislators when you approach them from this perspective?
Well, unfortunately, this is the first time there's been a digital ad tax proposed in New York. There is a digital ad tax in operation in other places across the country. Maryland's the template for this. Maryland is also the kind of, I happen to be outside the Washington, D.C. area right now, or outside Washington, D.C. right now. And Maryland's a place where they've implemented a digital ad tax. They've collected a lot of money. They still haven't solved their budget deficit. The state of Maryland is still in the hole, and it hasn't really done anything to sew up that problem. New York and some other places are trying to emulate Maryland's experience, which, by the way, could also be illegal, because these taxes are taxes on digital advertising as opposed to, let's say, print or broadcast or radio advertising, et cetera. So you could say it's quote unquote discriminatory against the digital environment. And so not only does it raise prices, it's unfair. And to answer your question, what are politicians in New York doing about it? Well, they've reintroduced the bill because it's not popular and it's failed. But we certainly don't want to see it pass this time around. And just simply because it's going to raise taxes, it's going to make New York uncompetitive, it's going to hurt small businesses, it's going to hurt the policymakers' own constituents. And we just really want them to listen to this issue. I think part of what we're trying to do here with you today is make the internet and technology and digital advertising a kitchen table issue in a way that your community understands, because everybody in the Bronx relies on digital advertising writ large for email, content, marketing, advertising, communication, speech, creativity, commerce. And if we describe it in these ways, I think people in Albany will understand better exactly what they're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you've cleared up a lot for those people who may not be so familiar. I think for somebody who's just introduced to it, they have the opportunity to know how digital advertising actually plays out, the emergence of it, and now possibly the potential consequences of going to a tax that could affect even the average everyday consumer. And I know we're talking about the price of eggs these days, but
Correct.
When we're talking about the price of eggs, look at some of these things that are going on. It's just another add-on. When you talk about now, I've got to deal with some more by way of money that goes out of my pocket into taxation.
Eggs advertise.
Yeah. So. Good. No, you take it away. I'll jump in after.
I was just going to say, and something personally relevant to you. Look, you're a media impresario. I understand you're a pastor. You are involved in social justice issues, improving your community. Churches, activist organizations, nonprofits, they all advertise too. And these are groups that really need to make a dollar count. And so it's not just small businesses, and it's not just big businesses, it's civil society, and everybody's invested in an outcome of digital advertising issues in New York, which is a media and advertising hub and should not destroy a leading business in the state.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? I mean, if you're putting the clock and the calendar out, where do we go from here?
I think the legislative session lasts for about another month. I'd have to check the status of this precise bill. I believe it's still under consideration. Look, it hasn't gained the traction I'm sure its sponsors would have hoped throughout its time in the process. If you have a local representative, it's Assembly People Reyes, Burgos, Senators Fernandez, Rivera, let them know. Just be interested in media and technology issues and put them on the radar of your public representatives. Talk about them because they're extremely interesting. We're in a technological revolution right now. We're in but no matter what you think of it, a media saturated environment, these issues affect your life. And so just be interested and think about how you're experiencing your environment in a new way regarding digital advertising. This techlash is happening in a number of different ways, whether it's data privacy or market competition and some things like that. Personalized, low cost, effective, efficient digital advertising is a net benefit for the Bronx, your viewership, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to talk about the issues here today.
No, I enjoy having you here. I only have about a couple minutes left, but I do want to talk about how do you see the future playing out when it comes to digital advertising? Do you see things on the rise? Do you see increasing challenges given the fact that we're talking about this digital tax and then some? How do you see it playing out?
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting question because when you look at the share of advertising that is digital advertising, it just keeps increasing. Over the course of years or even decades, digital advertising has become more and more important economically, socially, culturally. And today, as we mentioned, it funds a lot of the products and services that people have come to expect. They are the ad supported internet is ubiquitous in our lives, whether it's on the street, whether it's in your home, whether it's in streaming, audio, social media. As you know, television itself is moving online, and people are talking about AI and the metaverse. And guess what? It's ad supported. The ad dollars support the technological innovation that people appreciate. And the advertising itself is so much more personalized and than it used to be. And so I would say the other issue that's prevalent today, in addition to this idea that advertising has become so important that policymakers are looking at new ways to tax it in a way that they never have before, because we've had a hands-off relationship with these technologies. But the personalization aspect of advertising and media and marketing and content is becoming more possible and also more controversial. But it's how people communicate. For instance, if we took the example of your show or your interests, you might, if you are involved in your church, you might want to advertise your church to your local marketer, people who are interested in your denomination, pardon me. I think that's the right word, denomination.
Right.
And you want to be able to do that, but there are restrictions that policymakers are thinking about that are going to prevent groups of people from talking to other groups of people based on certain characteristics, and a lot of that is going to be off limits. It could be off, and I think we have to think about the fact that we do a lot of our communicating online. It's very different today, and if you want to be precise in who you're talking to, it requires data and personalization, and that's controversial today too. And so the bigger these industries are, the more sophisticated they are, the more scrutiny there is, and let's just all be aware of the issues, because ultimately these are important industries.
Definitely. And we got to stay connected. So please, if you get some more information, let us know how this bill goes. We'll be following it. Senate Bill S-173 on small business right here in New York. As we said, Brendan and family have definitely sent a letter to the governor letting her know that they definitely oppose this. And we will see where it goes in the legislature. And we'll come back and we'll report on it one way or the other.
Let's do that.
All right.
Really enjoyed it. Anytime you want technological information, media, marketing, advertising, come our way. Internetforgrowth.com if you're curious.
Definitely. We got you there, Brendan. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, I want to let you know we are taking a quick break, but guess what? We'll be back with more right after this.
What's up, creative family? Discover your voice with BronxNet Community Media classes. Are you ready to bring your ideas to life? At BronxNet, we offer television production classes for community members ages 18 and over, empowering you to share your vision with the world. Get certified in field production, in-studio production, and our new exciting addition, podcast production. Once certified, you can create your own show to air on one of our 6 TV channels. It all starts with our free Unleash Your Ideas Masterclass, designed to help you plan your show idea and set you up for success on your production journey. This class is offered at the beginning of each month for your convenience. Our dedicated BronxNet team is here to support, encourage, and uplift you every step of the way. Join us and become a part of the creative force that engages and inspires the Bronx community and beyond. Sign up today and start your media journey with BronxNet. Visit BronxNet.org/education to learn more and register. Let's create something amazing together.
And welcome back. Through her 3 published books, our next guest examines interdisciplinary education, the workings of Congress, and the impact of institutional racism. Beyond her reach, beyond the classroom, she now engages a wider audience through her podcast, where she offers a journalistic perspective on political events and the roles of African-American women in government. Joining me now is educator, historian, author, and journalist, Dr. Candice Rouser. And Dr. Rouser, thank you so much for being with us, and glad to have you sharing.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
And when we talk about where we are today, obviously there seems to be this whitewashing in America that goes on, and then you find yourself right there at the forefront as one who is, a teacher and advocate for that of history, and particularly African American history. When you look at where we are as a country and a society today, and all the work that has gone on, knowing the history and knowing the hard work that's gone on to preserve and really bring it before the people, to find ourselves in a place where we are today, your thoughts?
Well, the first thought I have is I did not think I would ever see this day, at least not in my lifetime. Being an historian, I'm just accustomed to reading about what people experienced before me, the generations before me. I didn't think that I would be living the past that I actually studied.
And to find yourself in it right now certainly is surreal, to say the least. But as you engage students and you have these conversations with your students, what is the message and what are you teaching these days in the face of all of this?
So interestingly, just the importance of history at the earlier levels, as packaged as social studies. Recently had an experience where a young person didn't see the relevance. So I had to go old school, when we came up, if you didn't know something, look it up. So, I went to the definition of social studies, and then at the college level, it's usually under social science. And I said, well, as long as people are living, we're relevant, aren't we? We're here, right? And I just made a connection to something he learned about antiquity and, a hot button issue in the world today in the conflicts in the Middle East. And he said, wow, nobody's ever explained it to me like that. So I kind of like opened his eyes. And I think for more young people, they need to understand that we're talking about people at the end of the day, and people will always be relevant.
Yeah, people are relevant, and the stories need to be told. And if the story's not told, history is missed, and we need that history out there. For yourself, obviously, you're pretty engaged. You've got 3 books already under the umbrella, and I want to talk a little bit about this book. The second one, actually, Engaged Citizen, because what you do is you take a look at Congress, and you take a look at Congress and the activities that have been going on since 1993. When we look at Congress today, and we see the activities that are going on, you could write a whole new book, Doctor.
Oh, indeed. I'm waiting to do the update, to do a new edition. But, what inspired me to publish, it's actually a lecture from American government and politics from my days at the City University of New York. And I just wanted the public, anyone who would, buy the book, to learn the fundamentals of what Congress is, what it does, and for them to be much more active, to follow more closely, so that they would see how fundamental the legislature at the federal level and every level is, and that they would be encouraged to make sure that they voted in every election. So, that's, I'm sitting back watching, and it's just like, guys, I need you to know, the key elements of this entire body and the process. And then you would have a fuller understanding of the difficulties that the current makeup of our 119th session of Congress has,
Yeah.
in responding to what's happening.
I'm gonna come back to Congress in a few minutes because certainly I have a couple more questions for you with regards to that. But I do want to get the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the work that you do on the international front, where you take a look at what's happening in the United States. You take a look at what's happening in the United States, the racism and all of the ills of this society, and then you juxtapose that to what goes on in Africa/South Africa, and the things that are happening out there. And when you look at what's happening in America, the history of racism, we know South Africa and apartheid, and then Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu. Bring it all together for us, if you can and will, about how these actually intersect.
So the two current countries have a shared history of being settler colonies, settled and colonized by similar European powers during the same century, which is the 17th century. And they both, the British, ultimately the victor here, the British and the Dutch, the victors out of the competitors in South Africa. And they went on to build societies for their benefit, and to the detriment of the peoples, in the case of South Africa, who were indigenous to that territory. And in the case of the United States, the indigenous people here, and then the Western and Central and Southeastern Africans that the European powers brought to the United States, to cultivate this land not for any compensation, et cetera. And we still live and we see those remnants of these institutions that have been erected in both countries. And often there's a misconception on the part of Africans in the United States. And when I say that, I'm talking about generations, those of us here from the 17th century, where they don't think that people of African origin in other parts of the world understand what we live and what we experience, because they themselves have experienced that. And the parallel for us is particularly South Africa. Even though the numbers are shifted, even though you have a European minority in that country with an African majority, and in the US you have a European majority and an African minority, it is still the same ideologies that forged the institutions that led to the suppression, oppression, and subjugation of African peoples in both countries.
And as we look at today, obviously you got to say to yourself, wow, much has changed, but then at the same time also much remains the same. And I'm going here because I think that you got to speak to it. And part of you speaking to it actually is I know you're also a podcaster. So being on the other side of the microphone now. So talk to us about your podcast and how you really address a lot of these things right in that conversation.
Okay, so I technically have two. One is educational, and the new one is coming from the journalistic perspective. The educational one, I call it the Facts Before Fiction record. Um, and the newer one, the newer company associated with it is Historiatrics Media. So something that I did with my college students in my history and political science classes, which were, some of them are global themed and some of them are pertinent to the US. I would give the historical facts or the political concepts, and they would bring in news. And so, with the journalistic or the news podcast, I'm flipping that. I want to go myself and capture the news, but I want to kind of remain local for now. In that exercise with my students, giving them the historical events, and them coming in and bringing the current events, we all experience in real time learning how things might change and how things stay the same. And in most cases, things actually remain the same, surprisingly. With my podcast, I respond to some of the news of today, and as I said, I bring the historical context or additional breakdowns or some things that might have been missed. But as I said, I want to be the one going to capture the events, capture public opinion myself today.
How are you able to bridge the, and I'll use that word, the gap, right? Because when we talk about us as media, us in media definitely have gaps. And we used to be objective. There used to be a time we used to be objective. I know it seems like God knows how long, but the reality is we're not anymore. And so we know that media is biased. How do you go about filling those gaps of bias from a historical perspective? Because when we look at a lot of historical content and the whitewashing that's going on and the things that we're seeing that's happening today, it's very easy not to be able to find some things when access to those things are becoming more and more challenged by the day.
Um, so the fact that, coming from the experience, the professional experience as an educator, um, the number one goal for me is accuracy and facts. It was my job. I was compensated with wages and a salary, right? To teach, to impart, to present facts. And what I hoped that I did with my students is, once I set the foundation of facts for them, then they would generate their own opinions. So I have the professional experience of doing that. I did get positive feedback. And shout out to my St. John's University students from many years ago who gave me the feedback that they appreciated that I not only gave them the facts, but I actually was comfortable and courageous enough to share my opinion with them. And I guess modeling, once you have all the available facts, that you should come up with this particular opinion. Um, and like as far as presenting factual stories, accurate stories, truthful stories, whichever descriptor you want to use, all of us as humanity coming together, not only in the world, but in this country, we all have something we've contributed to our world today. And it takes nothing from any of us as any branches of humanity to highlight and uplift and celebrate those good contributions that we've made and to acknowledge and hopefully present it as a lesson for us to learn to not repeat those bad things we might have done. You know, I see it's all necessary. We all need to be reflected in our world, and particularly in the United States, because we are a country that the world has made to an extent. We are a country of immigrants.
Yeah. For people who want to know more about your podcast, how do they get connected and what do they do?
Well, my podcasts are hosted. It is a connection with Spotify. So you could either search by Historiatrics Media on Spotify, or you could search Dr. Chronology. That's my alias, I guess. The Facts Before Fiction record. And pretty much on all my social medias, my username is Dr. Chronology.
Well, Dr. Chronology, tell me something. How are we going to make sure that the things that we're seeing and the things that we're observing, that there's going to be a fact? How do we maintain facts, and how do we maintain the history in this climate?
Well, the method of research, right? Making sure, unfortunately, we might have to take a little bit more time than we would anticipate, but making sure that our sources are reliable and credible, right? That will take, people going to a particular website and going to search the about to see who is behind this website, who is behind this outlet, this blog, this podcast, etc. Um, Rely on your local libraries as well, right? They have built a collection for the public, right, for public use. Um, just stay tuned in. Follow people that you trust, people who have built a credible reputation and professional experience. rely on your educators as well as your media.
Yeah. I mean, the confirmation bias is real, you know, and when we look at what's happening in today's society, it's very real and a lot that you have to kind of like navigate yourself through, I should say. And when you talk about doing the research, sometimes we're not that we're not that diligent in doing the research simply because we have so much access that's right in front of us. We take the first thing coming, and instead of taking the first thing coming, doing that deeper dive, finding out that, oh, there's more to that story, finding out, oh, maybe that part was left out, finding out, oh yeah, this is our history. It goes a long way.
Yeah, it does. Some of the things that we're dealing with in the country right now is because of misinformation. Unfortunately, more people than we want to acknowledge or admit not doing some of the groundwork, excuse me, and necessary research, taking that additional 5 minutes to look at the third or fourth search result page, et cetera, right? Or taking that time to listen to the person who's taking longer than 30 seconds to explain something. There are some things that we need to know as participants in a democracy in these United States, that it takes longer than 30 seconds to find out what those things are about.
Yeah. Well, I do want people to have an opportunity to take a look at what took longer than 30 seconds to find out, which is your work. That is a few books that you have out there. And you got The Broad Scope, you've got Engaged Citizen, and Forward Movement. For people who want to get a copy of your book, and I'll probably be one of those too as well, how do you go about doing that?
So I have one link that has everything there. It is Linktree/Dr. Chronology, and it's link tr.ee/Dr.Chronology.
All right.
And you should be able to access everything there.
Dr. Candice Rouser, also known as Dr. Chronology, thank you so much for being with us and sharing with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care. Thank you. Well, we want to let our viewers know that we come to the end of our show today. Hope that you enjoyed this week's discussion on the Social Justice Forum. If you want, you can join us next week. We continue to elevate the conversation, bring you some more discussion, and bring further issues and awareness to the things that are going on, not just locally, but across the globe. I'm your host, Daren Jaime, saying take care and God bless.